Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second UF COMMcast, a podcast about the University of Findlay Communication Department and all that's moving and shaking here. Today we welcome the chair of the department, Dr. Diana Montague. Thank you for joining us.
It is truly my pleasure.
Okay, so I'm just going to start with some basics. How long have you been at the University of Findlay?
I have been here for 35 years. I came in 1986, just as I was finishing my master's degree in journalism at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign.
Okay, so what did you do before you started teaching here?
When I first got out of undergraduate, I had a bachelor's degree in journalism from Valparaiso University. I graduated in 1983 and immediately went up to Winona, Minnesota, and I was an assistant news editor and columnist up there for just about 2.5 years. Then I went back to graduate school at U of I, and that was a 12-month program. And then as soon as I graduated there, I came here to teach.
Okay, great. So what led you to teaching? Why did you decide you wanted to teach?
Well, I was in my undergraduate work and I worked at the student newspaper, The Torch, and I was the editor. And I decided in my senior year, I wanted to teach. And I think that comes from my family. I'm the oldest of 6 children. My father, who was an accountant, was also a teacher, and so the old joke was, if you ask my dad what time it is, he'll tell you how to build a watch. So it was always, you explain things, and I enjoyed doing that. So, but I mean, my degree was in journalism, so I went and I worked at a newspaper for a couple of years, and while I was up there, I got to teach a course in editing at Winona State University, and I enjoyed doing that, so I decided to go back to graduate school so I could teach full-time.
Okay, cool. What has surprised you about teaching?
I think, and that's a long question, because when I look at teaching, and I've been doing it for 35 years, and so much has changed in our world, as well as changed in the field of education in those 35 years. I mean, when I came here, I brought my own word processor, and this was like, there weren't any computers here, so this was kind of, big stuff. Somebody had a computer, and I remember teaching courses on how to teach students to reach behind the monitor and turn it on. And so we've come so far since then. So teaching was completely on content when I first started. And now there's so much more on technology and how to use it and its impact on content. So, and also when I began teaching newspapers. And so as one of the legacy media, it didn't have the competition from the internet at the time. And so it was a robust medium. And there were quite a few jobs in the newspaper industry. And so we prepared students differently than we do now when even if you're working for a legacy medium, you are still doing it in a convergent atmosphere. So you're doing more than just writing newspaper stories or editing newspaper stories. So I think because culture and technology have changed, as well as assessment procedures have changed. So I think there's so much more behind the scenes now in teaching. Actually being in the classroom is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, so many hours goes into preparing a lesson, and you have to do it in multi-platforms, and you never know when you're going to get pushed online. So I just think that I look at that iceberg, and there's so much more beneath the surface of preparation and curriculum development and researching to get ready for the latest information. So it's, we're still teaching people to be critical thinkers and better writers and have media literacy skills. But the process to get to the classroom, whether it be face-to-face or online, that process behind the scenes has become much more complex.
Absolutely. Do you have a moment that you remember in your career? I know it's been a while, but Was there like this moment that you just remember? Maybe it was a rewarding experience with a student, or it was an aha moment, or something like that?
There have been many moments. Well, I guess the irony is when you say, has there been a moment? And my first memory goes back to my first semester teaching here. And I was putting in 70 hours a week because I was running the student newspaper and teaching full time down at the prison. We had a prison program and doing the journalism classes. And I went through 3 editors in the first 8 weeks. And I remember one Friday, some of my colleagues were meeting downtown for a Friday afternoon get together, and I couldn't find it. And it was just the end of the week, and I drove up and down Main Street and I couldn't find it. So I went home and I just sat there and cried. And it's like, I don't know that I can handle this teaching. And I mean, I got over it then, but it was that, okay, you have to have your overwhelming moment, and then you get back up and you go do it again. So I think that you have to build resilience. And so that was a moment. There have been other moments that I do remember, and again, many of them were early in my teaching career because they were new moments. When I first came here, one of the reasons I came to teach here was because we had a prison program, and my master's thesis was on the allegiance of Chicago street gangs to color and symbols. And so I had done some research in Chicago on gangs, and so here was an opportunity to teach in the prisons as well as teach journalism on campus. So that's one of the reasons I came here. And I just remember so clearly going into the prison, and you have to go through security in the Sally Port and all the locked doors, and just the sound of this clinking of the locked door when you're going in to the prison. And it was a medium security prison, and how just that moment, you don't have control of your life anymore. You know, you walk in and you teach, and it was some of the most interesting teaching experiences of my life. But just that loss of freedom. And I remember going home very early in my teaching at Lemma career, and I would bring a chair and sit up next to the refrigerator. I don't know why. And I would open the refrigerator and just say, I have the freedom to get into my own refrigerator and have my own food, and nobody's over my back, and I don't feel afraid. And so I think teaching down there just gave me such an appreciation for my own life. So that was another moment. I think some of the other moments that relate more, I guess, to the content of what I've been teaching, seeing some of our graduates get really good jobs and really flourish. Some in PR, in marketing. We've had, even just recently, we've had several graduates who've gone into multimedia journalism and are anchors at television stations. So those moments when it's like, I had a little bit of impact there, and I feel really good about that. So that's just, I mean, that's kind of a wide range from 35 years ago to 2 years ago. But I think those in particular are different moments that I recall.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about journalism. And I know that you and I are both a little biased because we teach journalism.
Yes.
But what do you think, if you could tell just the average person, what is the importance of journalism?
Real journalism, which is people who have been trained to gather information and vet it and double check it and put it together so that it has meaning for a particular audience. I mean, it should be information that is useful, that is important, and has been verified. And for me, journalism, locally, you need to know what's going on in your community so that you can participate. You need to know if there is wrongdoing. And that's the whole concept of the watchdog principle of the fourth estate of journalism, is if power is not being held accountable, it's going to run amok. Mm-hmm. And so we've certainly seen that on broader scale, but because there's been, when the internet gave us information and in some places didn't charge us, people stopped paying for local news. And it's kind of a spiral effect when there's fewer subscriptions, and so they don't pay as many reporters, and so there's less information to be able to sell, and then the price goes up. And so it really has an impact on local communities more so than national. Like the Washington Post, the New York Times, they're doing fine when it comes to money. Mm-hmm. And so they have good journalism, and they are holding national and international power accountable. But it's so important locally, I think, for people to know how to gather that necessary information and share with the community what they need to know. Certainly what they want to know, but what they need to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is the current journalist, like what drives today's journalists? It's certainly not, an appreciated industry as much anymore these days. Yeah. So what drives that everyday journalist, you think?
I think it's still the same thing that drove me some 30 some years ago, is people need to find out information. I know how to find it. I know how to tell stories that will explain it. And so I am drawn to what is interesting, what is important, and I feel compelled to want to write about that to help people. And so I look at some of the local reporters and just how drawn they are to covering their beats, and how important and how beats have changed because culture has changed. But they just feel drawn to find out that important information and share it with people because it makes them better citizens.
Mm-hmm. And I know media literacy is a passion of yours. So what sparked that passion, and how do you share it?
I have seen so much false information, particularly since the dawn of social media and the internet. I mean, there's always been false information, but the premise of teaching media law is both truth and falsehood will grapple, and eventually truth will win out. Well, that's not true anymore. With the internet, falsehoods seem to have the stronger arms. And so I've just seen too many people act upon wrong information, some misinformation, or in some cases intentionally wrong information. So it's disinformation. And so people often don't realize, first of all, they should check it. They just believe everything they see, but that there are very accessible means to check out whether something is true or not. And there's all kinds of places online, and there's different, you can do fact checking directly, but there's also more subtle things of different types of bias that we have individually, that media has. There are algorithms that when you start searching for one type of thing, or you start clicking on one category, or even like in TikTok, the more time you spend on a type of video, it's going to feed you more of the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so you end up with more confirmation bias. It's like, I only read things that I already agree with. And so you just get yourself drilled down into thinking that you are right, you are not wrong, there's no other perspective. And so to dig out of that hole, you have to take off those blinders and say, wait a minute, where did this information come from? Mm-hmm. Who sent it? Who created it? What was their intent? What was their audience, their original audience? What other audiences might get them? And there are so many. There are bots out there. There are trolls out there that just look like normal people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there are normal people who are kind of on the fringes And it looks exactly like some of those made up accounts. So before people act upon wrong information, and they don't recognize where biased information is, and they don't recognize how conspiracy theories start, it's important for me to tell people at the very least, check your sources. Can you find it somewhere else? Who sent it out? What was their purpose? So it's important for me that we have smarter citizens if they know how to interpret, engage, and vet the information that they spend so much time with.
I guess one of my frustrations is the people that don't necessarily want to be media literate or look outside their own box, I guess. And the democracy dies in darkness. They just don't want to turn the light on. And how do we handle that? How do we inspire them?
I wish I had the answer. I mean, I would be a millionaire and I would be important. So and I don't know, because all the information they spend their time with is what they already believe. And so if you spend all your time in that same pool of water, you don't know you're wet. You have to step out of it to recognize, oh, wait a minute, maybe what I was surrounded with, there may be some issues. And again, nobody ever wants to admit they're wrong.
Right.
And if you don't recognize that maybe you were acting on some wrong information, then you are going to go on with those blinders. And I agree, it's scary. And I don't know how to fix it, other than what I'm trying to do in my classes is teach people, if you run into information, and if it's emotionally tinged, whether you agree or disagree, if there's some emotion there, put your little red flags up and go looking at, where did it come from? Is it opinion? Is it fact? Can I verify it? And so trying to teach baseline media skills with every piece of information, I'm hoping that eventually the people I'm teaching to do that will not only do it, but will suggest to others too. It's like, hey, where did you get that information? Do you think that we might want to double check that? It's a hard conversation to have, because again, it presents conflict rather than discussion. So again, nobody ever wants to admit that they're wrong.
And I know we both probably get into lots of great discussions with our students and in our courses and stuff about media literacy. But so you had mentioned earlier that we have some graduates that have gone into some very great aspects of the industry. What do you think future employers should know about our graduates here at Findlay?
I think that as the industry has changed, as communication industry has changed, where I started training people to enter legacy media, so it was you entered one medium or another, and now the communication skills that we teach here have to do with all different platforms and approaches. And so yes, you have to be a good writer to communicate, but you also need to know how to shoot video, how to take pictures, and how to combine writing for a broadcast type medium versus a print. And so I think future employers should know that we give our students experience and coursework in all different forms of the communication that are then again convergent now, and we also give them experiential opportunities on campus, both with the student newspaper, the radio station, the television studio, where they can practice those skills and make money while they're doing it, as well as every one of our students has at least one internship in an industry that they want to go into. So I really think that while we are a smaller school, our program offers a good deal of experience. So yes, we have them in classrooms, but they have the opportunity to really go do the practicing before they go out into their career fields. And I think that's really important for employers to know.
Okay. All right. Okay. Last one. What would you say you're most proud of at the university?
I would say, I guess overall, the one thing I am most proud of is the orientation service project.
Oh.
I was one of the co-founders of that in 2002, and at the time I was the director of the first year seminar program, and so we sent each seminar with their instructors out into the community to do a service project that had to do with the topic of their seminar. Well, that was 20 years ago, and while we don't connect it to the freshman seminars anymore, we still send out every new student into the community their first weekend on campus to serve the community. We send out dozens of faculty members and staff members and alumni to lead those students. And so every third week of August, we have close to 2,000 hours of service that our new students bring to this community. And I was in on the founding floor of that. And so to me, I guess after 35 years, that's pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. And kind of emphasizes the relationship between the university and the community, and how the university is served beyond just, you know, taking in the students and teaching them, but served in many, many ways.
Yeah, and for me, when we introduce our students at the very beginning and they get to see a little bit of the community, we build bonds with the community, and students have several more years to go in and continue to interact and serve if they wish. But it also, I think, builds that mentality of, I'm part of a community, and so to build that community, I need to give.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. That's a great accomplishment.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us on our UF COMMcast. If you'd like more information about the University of Findlay Communication Department, you can check out findlay.edu/communication. Thank you.
My pleasure.